All right, everyone, back here live on PALS TV. Each Tuesday, we've been heading down to Gallia County or just across the river to Mason County, West Virginia, and getting some terrific history lessons with Ed. And he's really walked us through the colonial times and how far we've come in our history in that area, and went through some of the very significant history with the Native Americans from that region. Dave and Brooke actually even stepped in and gave us a walking mural tour. And then last week we had the pleasure of walking through the state park with Sir Walter Newman, and getting the vast history of that area. And we're going to build off of it today. So next we'll be live from Mason County, West Virginia with Ed.
Hello, are you there?
Yep, we can hear you, Ed.
Okay, good. This is the mansion house from the outside. Walter Newman, of course, built that in 1796. And walking toward us here is the park ranger at Twin State Park, Steve Browning. And he's going to be giving the tour. I know a little bit about what's outside, but he knows a lot about what's inside as well as the outside too. And so we've asked him to show us all the things that are inside, relics from when maybe the Newmans were here, but other things that have historical value. So Steve, let's go ahead into the house and see what we can find.
All right, so the best artifact that we have at the park here is the house, definitely. Built in 1796, so we're talking about 224 years ago approximately. And built by Walter Newman by hand, and it was used by his family for a few generations after that. They were very enterprising people. They had a lot to do with making money and running businesses. For example, the bottom floor was used as a tavern. This was where you could come and have a nice dinner or have a few drinks and enjoy your evening. A lot of people that frequented the place. One of the most famous would have been Daniel Boone. He spent several evenings here eating Mrs. Newman's fine meals. We also have a letter that he wrote to the provincial governor at the time of Virginia, where he had scouted the area. He talks about 30 miles upriver, 30 miles downriver. And here's a quick translation of it. You can see they spelled quite a few things a lot differently than we spell them today.
If I could interrupt, he mentions Leonard Cooper, which is my ancestor in this letter. So we're kind of proud to have that here in this museum.
Yeah, yeah. The house was purchased by the DAR in 1905. Here's an original picture of what it looked like when they first obtained the land and the house. And they did a restoration on it to bring things a little more up to date and make things, to convert it into a museum. And they've since filled it with multiple artifacts, both from the Newmans and from the local area. For example, I mean, there's multiple dishes from the time. There's several dishes from somewhat more modern times, but a couple of the things in this cabinet that really need to be pointed out.
Well, I can see Abraham Lincoln back there, and I can see, is that Theodore Roosevelt there on the left?
Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington in the middle.
Okay, he's kind of hidden by the middle. I'll move over for that. Yeah.
We also have a porridge bowl that Daniel Boone used while he visited the area.
That metallic looking bowl.
The pewter bowl there.
He wasn't much into China, it doesn't look like, was he?
Well, he probably wanted something more durable. For his
Yeah,
travels.
that's a fact. Yeah.
And then another really interesting thing is the surgical kit here. This is if something happened to you, you had to get a bullet out or whatever it may be. This was the surgical kit carried by Colonel Charles Lewis in the battle.
So at the Battle of Point Pleasant, that was what they carried.
Yes.
Not, it wasn't stainless steel and all antiseptic and anything, was it?
No. The phrase "bite the bullet" actually came from the operations they had to do on soldiers.
Yeah.
They would give them a bullet to bite on, and that was their anesthetic.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show how you didn't want to get hurt during those times.
Now, we don't have time to go over each and every plate, but it looks like they're all labeled. So if you got the chance to visit here, you could really study that out if you wanted, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And,
Nice, Kevin.
and there's things like this in every room.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go over a few of the high points as we can.
Yeah.
Rose Sturrett was the one who made this. Everything in here is either seeds or there's some moss, and a little wooden basket is the only other thing in there. But the rest of it is all different kinds of seeds all glued together, and it's very old at this point. The sign says 160 years old, but I don't know how long it was in here.
Yeah.
Since that sign was put on it.
Well, you said the DAR kind of was instrumental in getting this building updated to where we could use it. Some members of that might know when that 160 was written down, so we could add to it. Yeah. But it is it's an artifact, that's for sure. Yeah.
And then over here on this wall, we have feather art. They probably have a lot of feathers left over from having a chicken dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So they could use those to make some decorative pieces. And then this is
interesting to me, so I'm glad to hear you describe that.
This is another custom that dates back much longer than even our country. Is hair art. A lot of people they would clean their combs out and keep it, and then they could make. They were very skilled with it. I mean, it's hair, and you can see the flowers and the petals and everything else on it. But another time that they would do this is when someone passed away, because they didn't have cameras to take pictures of them, so they would take a few locks of hair and make artwork out of it
As a memento.
to their life.
And do we know whose hair this is?
This is Ann Bailey's hair.
Mad Ann Bailey.
Ann Bailey. It was originally red, but it has since faded some over
Yeah.
time.
Oh.
But this is Mad Ann Bailey's hair.
Well, if you know the story of Mad Ann, which we told last week, it's really good that we have a memorial to her here. Now, do you think that modern day beauticians would be into hair art now?
I figure there would probably be a couple laws or regulations against them keeping people's hair and doing things with it. Some people probably wouldn't be very happy with that.
Well, with the virus and everybody staying home and not being able to get their hair done, I guess we could cut our own hair and make our own.
It could make a comeback.
Yeah.
But there's actually a museum that I believe in Kentucky.
Yeah.
That just specializes in hair art. So I mean, it was very common in the 1700s, 1600s, and even earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Here we have a cabinet of dishes that were donated by descendants of Walter Newman. They actually came from an auction of Napoleon
Really?
Bonaparte, and that's what the big N stands for on the plates.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, it's a complete set. It's in very good condition for its age.
Yes.
And you know, as nice as those are, I'm actually more interested in the cabinet. All of this would have had to have been hand carved. There wasn't machinery to work on things like this.
Yeah.
So everything, all these little details would have had to been picked out with a little chisel.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine the hours and hours and hours you would have to put into this.
You'd have to be so careful because you wouldn't want to mess up.
Yeah, you make a mistake and you might have just cost yourself that whole section of the piece.
And the time it took to make it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, moving on, the Washington family is very, very prominent in the area. The majority of this area was actually owned by George Washington at one point in time. And as proof of that, we have this newspaper article from 1773, August 20th, 1773 is the date on it. It came from Baltimore, Maryland. But if you look really closely, of course, the writing's very small, so it's hard to read any of it. But you can see here an advertisement from Mount Vernon in Virginia that he wrote in July. And he's actually wanting to lease out 20,000 acres of land in this area.
Wow.
To someone.
Uh-huh. Well, I knew that he had surveyed some of this area, but I think the surveyors kind of claimed property that they wanted. Yeah, so he was quite the landowner at the time.
Very much so.
Yes.
Much of what they wanted to call Vidalia, that became West Virginia, was owned by George Washington at one time or another.
Now, that Vandalia that you mentioned was an idea of Benjamin Franklin, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and Point Pleasant, where we are today, was supposed to be that state's capital. But when the Revolution came up, I think those things faded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Virginia wanted a bigger chunk.
Yeah. Which we don't realize, but Virginia had West Virginia and Kentucky, as part. And I've also heard that Virginia claimed from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean at one time.
Well, all the original colonies extended their borders straight west, all the way out. It wasn't until later that they started dividing up and making other states out of that.
So Ohio wasn't involved in this at the time.
Right.
So Pennsylvania would kind of go through the state of Ohio to the Pacific Ocean is what you're telling me.
Yes, those straight borders they had on the top and bottom just extended
Yeah.
all the way to the Pacific.
Wow.
When they first
considered what that
considered
was their
what to
state.
do.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Well, I see some arrowheads. Do you want to point those out?
we can. There's quite a few, and they're from different eras too. Looking back, you can see, these are 6,000 and 7,000 BC, 8,000 BC. The older ones are up top, and you can see as they come down, the techniques that have been passed on and improvements to those arrowheads. And then as we get down to the bottom, these are the late woodland arrowheads. These would have been around the year 1000 to 1500 the time period. So you can tell that they got more precise as they went on. And this was a lifetime of learning that would be taken to make these arrows.
Yes.
It's a very, very difficult skill to learn. Flint knacking.
Yeah.
It's called.
Well, just to stop here for just a moment, we look at these fine dishes from Napoleon Bonaparte, just fantastic. And then with the scrolling work that we see here in the cabinet, and the hair art that's going on, and seed art and so forth. And then we get arrowheads. There's quite a variety here in this house, and we just basically covered about half of one room. So there's a lot of things to see and a lot of different interests to be perked here.
There's quite a bit of artifacts like arrowheads and other things like that up on the third floor. We'll get up there eventually.
Yeah.
But a little more about the house. Like I said, this floor was a tavern, and they bring the food up and feed everybody, and they'd have their drinks. So
now, you just said bring the food up.
Right. We're going to go down to the kitchen.
Okay. Is that what we're doing now, or okay?
We're going straight across here.
You got me so interested. I'm sorry to interrupt you so much.
That's no problem at all. This room is typically used as a meeting room for the Daughters of the American Revolution. There's a couple of pieces in here that I like to point out, but its main purpose is for their meetings. The first is the clock up on the mantle. This clock was owned by the Newmans, and it was here during the majority of its history. It's an original artifact. So there's 3 or 4 pieces throughout the house that will be original, and the rest of it are from other areas.
Okay. What about the picture? It looks like a house or something at the bottom. Is that significant?
Honestly, I'm not aware of what house that is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Maybe it was where they had come from.
It
Could be their home. That would be, you know, like having pictures of your family and so forth. And of course, coming out here on the frontier, you would want mementos from where you came. Okay, great.
That's very true. And then over here we have a few items of musical variety. We have an old wooden flute. We have a music box.
The flute. Can you see it there on top of the piano, right?
And then the music box on the end you could crank up, and it would slowly turn and play a few tunes for you. And then this piano here was the first piano to make it this far west. It was brought down the river. It's not a Newman artifact, but it's from the area. But and it's extremely heavy.
It looks like it. I've tried to move pianos in the past, and they're heavy, and they don't look near as what this is. Yeah.
It'd probably take 8 to 10 people to move this thing around.
Yeah.
So we leave it exactly where it is.
Yeah, probably some wheels or something will be involved as well. Yeah.
So we'll head on down to the basement here. Now the basement was rediscovered in the 1938 flood. The house was rocked off its foundation slightly, and that caused everything to open back up underneath. Since then, it's raided out, cleared out, and made into another room you can tour. When the house was in use by the Newmans, and when it was used as a tavern,
I think Ed's in a spot where he lost some service. We'll try to get him unmuted here. I think they're getting service back right now.
Okay,
There
are
you
you
go.
with us? Okay.
We're with you, Ed.
Yeah, we're talking about the great trees that they found when they came out to this area.
a lot of it was virgin forest, and the trees that they would have found would have been several hundred years old. A lot of them could have rivaled the redwoods and sequoias that are found out west now in sheer size and amount of wood in the tree. That's why they had these big, long saws. And this is a smaller version of this two-man saw. There's some that are 10, 15 feet long. But moving on.
So I see they made butter.
Yeah.
It's a butter churn.
Nowadays, you don't see these in use too much unless you go to, for example, the Amish country or somewhere like that where they do traditional cooking. And like I said, everything up here, it's all cast iron. That was the easiest way to make things. They had muffin pans. They had a waffle iron.
All right.
Something like this probably would have been preserved for the high class of society. This wouldn't have been a very common implement.
So is this something that the Newmans would have had? Were they that type of high class people?
They were very wealthy for their time, considering the enormous house he was able to build. He ran a ferry service, a tavern, and they would have had a nice income.
Yes.
For the time. So it's possible that this could have been something that they had at the time, but it wasn't a common cooking tool.
Yeah.
Just because the intricacy involved with getting little squares in the waffles.
Now the cast iron that they used, I've heard that if you use an iron skillet, you get some of the vitamins for iron in your body through the food that you eat from the pan that you cooked in.
That is very true.
So that could be a health thing for them as well.
Yes.
They made some apple butter too, I can see.
These would have been for stirring very, very
And
large
beans,
pots.
yes.
Beans, apple butter, soups, anything in a big cauldron. The witch's cauldron kind of would have been used there. We have a bow saw. This would have been for a little bit more finer woodworking than the large saw we saw before. We have multiple more dishes in china and fine dining implements.
Okay. And there's the apparatus that you make a quilt on.
Yeah, you would slowly turn these to move to the next section.
Yeah, to keep it tight as you sewed, right?
And they're easier to sew.
Now they had quite a few children, so they probably had some of their children doing tasks like the sewing on a new quilt and some cooking as they get the appropriate age for that.
They would have helped out cooking, and they would have helped out with the yard work and everything.
Yes.
At that point in time, the working age started about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Once you were steady on your feet, you could carry some tools around.
Yeah.
Here's a few more older examples of some tools. Of course, we have the rolling pin. It would have been a lot more effective hitting your husband on the head with this thing than what we have today.
That's true.
And then this was actually used to iron ruffles on clothes and curtains and such. They would heat these 2 bars up. They come off. They would heat them up and put them on, and then you'd roll it through, and it would put your ruffles on your shirt sleeves.
Wow.
And things of that nature.
So it's the idea of an iron, but doing something real fancy.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And then we have a charcoal iron. You would get some coals out of the fire you've been cooking on. You'd stick them inside of this, and it would heat everything up so that you could get any creases and everything out. There's a few smaller butter churns that you can keep near the table. Okay. Things were a lot different than what we
that's a fact. Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, let's see what's on the other parts of the house there. That's
up here.
nice for the kitchen, and they were very, very well stocked, and the use for heating the house in the winter as they cooked, and
they most likely would have had a cold cellar somewhere as well to keep their sides of beef and things fresh for longer. Now we'll get a little bit of a special treat. We'll get to come a little further in here than we usually do on the tour.
Okay.
But this was one of the bedrooms that you could stay in. They used the house as an inn as well. You could pay 50 cents to spend the night indoors.
Yeah.
Your other options at the time would be to sleep under the stars outside the fort. So if it was bad weather, a lot of people might have paid that 50 cents.
Yeah.
But it was a very high price to pay for a night's sleep at that point in time.
Yeah.
I like to usually say it was highway robbery. They were the only option.
Yeah. Lack of competition.
Yes. But we've got a few paintings and older pictures, but this is a painting that was done in the 80s of the mansion house. It shows the anchor and flagpole and the sundial that used to be there, and then the mansion house. This would have been a water basin you have this pitcher filled with water, and then in the morning you pour some in there to wash your face and take care of your daily cleanliness. And we'll see what they did about using the bathroom in the next room.
Okay.
But this is a great example of that. This is an original Newman bed, but a lot of the furniture and things of that time period, they were very smart about how they used space. You can see the big drawer underneath to keep the extra quilts in for when it got cold. Everything that they could fit a drawer into, they would put a drawer into. And here's a good example of a very fancy dress from the time. Most people wouldn't be able to afford anything like this.
Yeah.
But you can see that they did have some skilled craftsmen. That's for sure.
Yeah. Were they family members, or did they bring people from elsewhere in, or did they have skilled people that had started building up the community and they came with those skills?
Well, eventually there would have been skilled people moving to the area as the community grew. When the Newmans were operating it at first, I'm sure there wouldn't have been too many skilled craftsmen besides themselves. But as time went on, more people would have came to the area, more people would have built homes in the area, and that skilled craftsmanship would expand and develop, which was necessary.
To add into the community development, 1796 was the building of the house. 1804, Mason County became a county, and Point Pleasant was a county seat. So there had to be some growth in that less than 10-year period.
Yes, it would have grown fairly quickly because this was the western border at the time. This was as far west as the colonists were allowed, or the citizens at that point would be allowed to come until treaties and other things happened across the river.
Yeah. We're walking through there or back this way? Okay. A lot of documents are on the walls of different people. And here's a DAR certificate. A lot of different things to see here that we probably can't talk about today, but if you get a chance to visit, there's a lot of things to look at. I need to let you get in front.
And here we've got another bedroom set up. It has a few different examples of things they had at the time. Of course, we once again have the water basin. We also have this beautiful thing. This is what you would get to use the restroom in, so you didn't have to go outside at night. And then in the morning, you'd have to go and dump it.
Yes.
It's a very unpleasant job.
Yeah.
Usually you take that for them children that you weren't playing.
So it's encouraged for them to be good anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah. Here we have a tiny, like a stroller, a little carriage.
Yeah.
To be pulled behind another cart or behind a pony or something like that the kids could ride in. Now we have some examples of children's clothing. We have the original piece back here that would have been an armoire to put their clothes into. They didn't really build too many closets into their homes because space was at a premium.
Yeah.
We have some cradles. This one actually came from around 1820. And once again, you can see the fine craftsmanship. You can barely see the nail heads. And the time and effort put into these things is just.
Well, the time period you mentioned about this cradle would not have been Newman children, but could have been Newman grandchildren.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you said that the descendants of the Newmans made donations of things here.
Yes, they did. They did.
Is this a sewing machine here?
This is a sewing machine in the back. Nowadays, we have an electric motor.
Is the word trindle, is that the word for how the device where you
that's
trindle?
what the device at their feet here is called a trindle. And you have to rock that back and forth with your foot to get the
arm to sew for you.
Get the arm to sew for you.
Yeah.
So it moved that work from working down here with your hands to the power on your foot and move the cloth along. Yeah. Great advancements.
Yes.
And
probably not everybody had those.
No.
Again, we're talking about the influence of the Newmans and how
But for quite a while, that would have been reserved for
The
the wealthy.
wealthy, yeah. Mhm.
Let's check how we're running on time. Oh gosh, we are running a little late on time. Here we have a few more examples of period furniture in the area. The table and chairs actually match the cabinet that's downstairs. They have all the same woodwork up top.
Are they eagles or just birds?
Those are griffins.
Griffins.
Yes.
Oh, those are the scary creatures, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
A little more mythological.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The desk and cabinet in the back was owned by Colonel Lewis.
Now, was that Andrew or Charles? Are you not sure?
I'm not 100% sure. I always knew it was a Lewis, but I haven't delved far enough into it to find out which one it was.
Charles Lewis was killed at the Battle of Point Pleasant. His brother Andrew survived him, so probably it was Andrew's.
Most likely. We also see a couple of examples of looms that they would make the thread from to use on their
Whatever they were
quilts.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. So we'll go ahead and move on up. Now, this third floor is where the children slept at the time. We have the convenience of having stairs here, and fortunately, they did not. What they had were holes in the wall that they could shove pegs into and use like a ladder.
Yeah.
Once all the kids were up there and in bed and everything, the parents would pull all those pegs out. And we're still debating whether that was to protect the kids from the guests or protect the guests from the kids.
Yeah. That's always the question of the day, isn't it?
I figure it would vary from person to person.
I thought it might be just the Newmans enjoyed some peace and quiet for a while, having 9 children.
That would probably influence too.
So this is the third floor.
This is the third floor.
Yeah.
The majority of the smaller artifacts are found up here.
In these cases.
There's Bibles, there's knives that were carried, bullets from different eras. These would have came from Civil War and a little bit earlier, whereas the balls and grape shot could have been much earlier. We have a shoe that was found near the Newman racing.
Bayonet in the back there, I see.
Yeah, there's bayonets. There's horse bridles. Got a nice gun holster.
Oh, wow.
And stirrups. Powder horns. They would keep their black powder in these horns so they could pour a little bit out at a time, several cannonballs. Here we have quite a few different examples of the money that was around both during the time the Newmans were here and also after. You can even see the Confederate States of America. That would have been $100 in the Confederate currency. Now it's not worth. It's not worth much at all. Yeah. But even some of the towns and states printed their own money. Like here's the Bank of Charleston printed this dollar.
Now that's probably South Carolina?
That's most likely in South Carolina.
Yeah.
We have some old political advertisements.
That's what I was wondering if that's what that was. I was glancing at it.
It's, tried to get his message across why he should be elected. Yeah, and moving along, these are some of the more common household items. We have a few bottles that would have been reused. We have glasses, which is a very important thing to me. I'm glad that they at least had some type of glasses at that point.
And we mentioned Benjamin Franklin, but he was quite the person in developing eyewear.
Yes, the bifocals were originally developed by him so that you could see far away and see
and be able to read, which is my problem.
Quite a few doilies and things of that nature on the bottom here. As we move on, most of the Native American artifacts are found in these cabinets. Of course, all the arrowheads came from this area. A lot of them would have came from the field outside the house. And then others were donated from the surrounding area. We We have necklaces, drilled discs. I don't know exactly what they'd use them for, but I mean, multiple examples of the skill and craftsmanship that was found here before the Europeans came across.
Yes. I think is that a turtle shell in the back?
That's a turtle shell in the back. We have tomahawks, and baskets, and several forms of pottery.
I don't know what it's looking like on your screen, but it's very, very interesting to see in person. So we really encourage, especially the people in the Gal Plus PALS, to come over and visit.
Yes, we'd be happy to have you, definitely. Here we find some slightly more modern tools. We have throws, which they would use to split wood, sickles to cut grass and hay, even some a wooden club. Moving over, we have side saddle. This would have been a lady's saddle because they were supposed to sit with both legs on the same side of the horse. So
I don't think Mad Ann said that way.
Well, I doubt she did.
She was a frontierswoman woman if there ever was one.
More of the sophisticated and
Yeah.
types of ladies would have sat with both legs off the same side of their horse, so their dress wouldn't fly. And then moving on, we have a few old firearms in the cabinet here that have been donated. And then some more normal clothes than the dress we saw downstairs.
Yeah.
This would have been a little bit more common. Nice
And the
shoes.
shoes are down here at the bottom. Are those gloves as well at the bottom?
Those are gloves as well in the bottom.
Is that a slipper? I mean, those are like real shoes.
These would have been real nice dress shoes you'd wear to church, and
Okay.
these would have been more around the house.
Okay.
For their use.
And this is a dress. It's kind of dark to see in there. Is that a very nice dress?
That's a pretty nice dress. It has quite a lot of lace and design going up and down.
Yeah.
That would have taken several hours to put together.
So that'd be your Sunday go to meeting church
Yes.
thing, and that would be, I'm going to go cook dinner now.
Yes.
Okay.
That would probably be pretty accurate.
Now, of course, they didn't take pictures in 1796, but here's another wall of pictures of people down through the years. Anybody in particular here stand out that you know of, or are these just family pictures or somebody donated?
I've attempted to do a little bit of research on it because it's very hard to find information about someone unless they were significantly involved in the historical things of the area, or they moved on and were involved somewhere else.
Well, these pictures are what I call black and white. My children growing up, when they saw an old TV show, they said it was gray. They didn't call it black and white because they didn't know, because they always seen it in color. And of course, we're used to seeing color pictures now. But yeah, that just tells us some history. I see a lady's got some big old thing on her head. I mean, that's fashion that you study.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, even the haircuts that you see and the facial hair.
Yeah, that's a trendy thing, isn't it? You look down the line of presidents and who has facial hair and who doesn't.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps up the tour, doesn't it?
We can head back downstairs where it's a little cooler, and I'll take any questions y'all might have.
Okay. So if you want to arrange for some questions, if there are any out there, we'll be downstairs in just a moment. Boy, it's deep, isn't it?
Yes. One other thing, if you do come and visit, make sure you watch where your head is. The doorways and stairwells in this place are very small compared to what we're used to today. It's pretty easy to knock your noggin.
Yeah. So we have any questions?
So yesterday we actually did a tour of a newer house being built, and I was showing people about the studs, and we looked at trusses, and we had beams that were up in the basement and things like that. So what we were talking about the importance of having those weight carrying things. What kind of it looks like it's very finished in there. What kind of things did they use back then to build that were a lot different than today?
Well, for the interior, a lot of the interior was refinished during the first restoration that they did, which would have been in the early 1900s. But if we go outside, we can see a lot more detail about the building techniques that were used when Walter Newman built the home. This particular section is pretty good because it actually, you can see the axe marks. They would take a big long log and swing their axe at an angle.
Ooh.
And that would be that'd be as straight as they could get it without using hand planes. For these outdoor walls, you didn't have to have them straight. You just wanted them somewhat close together, and then you would take wood or straw and mud to shove in there, and then you'd put the chinking across, and it'd seal everything up. Each of these logs, especially these logs further up, some of them can go across the whole length of the house. It'd be several hundred pounds you'd have to lift up there.
So these little logs that we see the ends of are like the floor joists that we have in our basement and so forth.
That's correct.
And is that 3.5 or 4 inches wide and 6 inches high?
Yes.
And I don't think we build with lumber quite that big today, do we?
It'd be incredibly expensive.
And then particularly the hewn logs.
Yes.
They are tremendously large as well.
It would be very hard to get the amount of lumber in the sizes needed to rebuild this house. You can see here's a side section of one of those. And then when you look over here, you can see how they put those together. They do an angled joint so that they'd set together kind of like Lincoln logs, and then fill in the rest with the chinking and the other items.
Lots of work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work.
Back then, how many people do you think they used to have working on a project like that, and how long do you think they would work on something like that?
Well, it would depend on the project. I mean, a lot of people would build their own houses, and they'd have help from their friends, but no more than 6 or 10 in most cases, if you were a very friendly person.
And you didn't go right down to the hardware store and buy the log.
Right.
You had to make the logs and then put them together.
You'd have to cut down the tree. You'd have to cut off all the wood. You'd have to flatten the sides to get it to the size you needed.
So it was all on you to do it.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah, I think we really underestimate how well-rounded the folks were, because like you said, they had to go out and get the trees. They had to know how to prep the trees. They also had to be architects. They also had to be builders. You know, it was they were some pretty impressive people.
Yeah. The wealth of knowledge they had definitely rivals some of our more educated people from the area. That's for sure. But their knowledge was also in different areas. Today we have specialists who build our homes, but that was a common and widespread practice at that point in time, is to build your own home. That was a mark of your status, of your ability, and your position in the community.
Well, these have been tremendous segments. Ed, Steve, thank you guys. Great tour. Steve did a great job. Really, really did.
So thank you very much for.
Our pleasure. Thank you. So that was awesome, everybody. That concludes our tour down in Gallia County, Sir Walter Newman's mansion down there. I loved those segments last week. The history leading up to to his home, and then actually getting a tour and walking through that property was special. So thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and everyone else, come back and join us here in 15 minutes as we head to Columbus and join Phil. Come back and join us soon.